Vaughn. Next witness is Dr. James Thorpe. Dr. Thorpe is a board-certified obstetrician gynecologist and maternal fetal medicine specialist with over 44 years of clinical experience. As U.S. veteran and widely published physician, he has testified internationally, served as a journal peer reviewer, board member of the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine, and examiner for the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Dr. Thorpe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My patients, I focus on the most vulnerable patients, pregnant women and preborn. It is difficult to conceive of a more egregious breach of medical ethics by the government-controlled medical industrial complex than the promotion of COVID-19 vaccines to pregnant women, thereby, through transplacental transfer, effectively vaccinating their unborn and newborn children. This campaign was not accidental. It was calculated. Pregnant women were targeted deliberately for two reasons. First, women are the primary decision makers of healthcare across the human lifespan, a known marketing principle. Number two, pregnant women are the most vulnerable patients. If they could be convinced that the vaccine was safe and effective, it would imply that it was safe and effective for everyone. From the outset of the pandemic, this vaccine campaign was never grounded in biological science, but rather in behavioral science, specifically the manipulation of public perception through influence, fear, and persuasion. The federal government outsourced much of this psychological operations to NGOs which disseminated emotionally charged and misleading messaging. These entities falsely assured pregnant women that the vaccines were proven safe and essential for maternal and fetal newborn health, despite the fact that early evidence indicated quite the opposite. Pregnancy itself was protective against COVID-19 maternal mortality. Dr. Jay Winston, an initiative director at Harvard School of Public Health, described the government's vaccine marketing approach in a 2020 CBS News interview. He explained that the strategy was to, quote, go for the low-hanging fruit, those easiest to pick and harvest, end quote. And the fruit, in quotes, tragically, were pregnant women. Only this deception was institutionalized in the now infamous Shimabukuro study published on April 21st, 2021 in the digital version of the New England Journal of Medicine. 21 authors claimed the miscarriage rate was 12.6%, but the raw data revealed an 82% miscarriage rate in women vaccinated during the first trimester. This figure mirrors the effects of chemical abortion drugs such as RU-486. Also, in the same journal edition, on the same day, an op-ed appeared by CDC Director Rochelle Walensky and journal editor-in-chief Eric Rubin. These publications were riddled with conflicts of interest and deliberate misrepresentations intended to coerce pregnant women into taking vaccines. Subsequent studies have also claimed that COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective during pregnancy and have been rebuked by respected researchers. These publications are fundamentally compromised by serious conflicts of interest, ranging from biased funding sources and institutional mandates, and even threats to their medical licenses and board certifications. Between 2020 and 2022, pharmaceutical companies paid $1.06 billion to reviewers at leading medical journals, the New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA, Lancet, and BMJ, thus corrupting the peer review process. At least 6 existing studies, 3 from CDC, FDA, and 2 from Pfizer, revealed major breaches in safety signals for COVID-19 vaccines and pregnancy. These findings were ignored. Conversely, countless independent researchers with no conflicts of interest published findings that contradicted the false narratives and the pharmaceutical industry narratives, only to be rewarded by persecution, censorship, and threats to their medical licenses and board certifications. This is not hypothetical. It happened to me. On February 8, 2025, our team of researchers published a peer-reviewed study in Science, Public Health Policy, and the Law. We identified 37 adverse pregnancy outcomes significantly associated with COVID-19 vaccine, including miscarriage, stillbirth, birth defects, cervical insufficiency, premature rupture of membranes, preterm birth, and death of the newborn. Lin and colleagues in a major journal publication documented that the COVID-19 vaccine traverses the placenta, enters the fetal blood, and bioactively produces spike protein in the placenta and the lining of the uterus. Recently, animal studies revealed the mRNA COVID vaccine causes the destruction of 60% of the ovarian reserve in rats. This catastrophic public health failure was financed with taxpayer dollars and channeled through federal agencies to medical gatekeepers such as the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, ACOG, the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology, ABOG, and the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine, SMFM. These organizations have abandoned their ethics and responsibilities to physicians and patients and must be held accountable. I urge the government to immediately halt all funding to these entities and to end every promotional campaign that coerces or recommends experimental mRNA therapies to pregnant women. This must stop now.
Again, going to Dr. Thorpe. And I'm going to probably interrupt you because I want everybody to understand what you're talking about in this study, because we're talking about numbers here, but describe that study on, would you call it fetal demise, miscarriage, and how it was originally presented as evidence to push this on the most vulnerable, as you're saying, pregnant women and the unborn. And how did they distort that study to make that point? Go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. So the study in question is a New England Journal of Medicine on April 21st, 2021. And in that same day, the digital edition, there were two publications that were extraordinarily concerning. Both of them, interestingly, coming at a time when vaccine hesitancy was increasing. So the Shimabukuro study was a separate study in addition to an op-ed. The op-ed was by the New England Journal of Medicine, editor-in-chief, who was Eric Rubin, and the managing editor, who was Stephen Morrissey, and then director of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky. And they made statements that were false. They made statements that was fear-mongering, insinuating that pregnant women, if they didn't take the vaccine, would put their lives in harm, their preborn lives in harm, and their newborn lives in harm, when they knew absolutely the opposite was true.
How did they know that?
Well, they know that for several reasons, Senator. Number one, the study by Pinnells and colleagues, who is a maternal fetal medicine specialist from University of Texas, Houston, published a very large study documenting that pregnancy in of itself reduced the maternal mortality by as much as 75% during pregnancy compared to non-pregnant women. That study was available. Also, Dr. Shimabukuro, Tom Shimabukuro, and then director of the CDC, this was 7 weeks after the Pfizer 5.3.6 post-marketing data in 10 weeks that showed the COVID-19 vaccine was the deadliest and most injurious vaccine ever released, with 42,086 injuries, including 1,223 dead. They had that information. They still pushed it on pregnant women.
So let's get to the number where there's 700 individuals included in the statistic that shouldn't have been included. So describe that. I mean, talk about this study.
Right. Well, there's bias. There's bias in the title. Okay, just look at the title. There's bias in the 21 authors, all of whom were federal employees, and Tom Shimabukuro, a safety officer in the FDA itself. Then you go to the numbers. We're looking at about numbers of over 4,000 in a 10-week period. And then all of a sudden, it's just, how do we arbitrarily go to 10 weeks in this V-safe smartphone collection system? And then what happened to all the other patients? We go down to 827 patients. What happened to the rest?
So you got 827 patients that became pregnant or were pregnant in this, in terms of, again, it's not really studied, but I mean, they're just analyzing data. So you had 827.
Right.
Okay, so these were women who were pregnant.
Right. 827 that completed a pregnancy in 10 weeks.
Which is not necessarily a born child, but the pregnancy
Or
is.
a miscarriage, right.
Okay.
Now, they claimed a 12.6% miscarriage rate.
Which is pretty kind of a normal miscarriage?
No, it's not. No.
What's a normal miscarriage rate?
3% when you have a normal booking visit.
Okay, so it's already an abnormal miscarriage rate in that 827.
That's correct.
Okay.
And
so now describe exactly how they.
Okay, so we have 827 patients, right? And they talk about a 12.6% miscarriage. But a miscarriage of those 827, 700 of those mothers had their vaccine in the 3rd trimester. That's way beyond the window when a woman has a miscarriage. So they artificially took those 700 patients and put them in the 1st trimester. No, the 104 patients that had the miscarriage, that goes to the 127. 104 over 127, you're looking at an 82% miscarriage. So the key is the percentage of women that got the vaccine in the 1st trimester had an 82% miscarriage. And by the way, that's the exact same miscarriage rate that was seen in the Pfizer 5.3.6 post-marketing
So
data.
I would argue that proves both points in the title of this hearing: the corruption of science, the corruption of federal health agencies, patient type of thing. Dr. Thorpe, quickly.
Yes, on informed consent, there was completely the opposite in pregnant women. HHS appears to have captured the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and my research team, including Maggie Thorpe, JD, have proven that with the Freedom of Information Act.
For a few million dollars, correct?
Many $1 million. They captured ACOG. In December of 2020, everybody at ACOG and the other organizations, we're not going to push this vaccine in pregnant women. In the span of a pregnancy, 40 weeks, September 27th, 2021, you will push the vaccine. You will push it in pregnant women and follow all the HHS criteria. And if you don't, we will destroy you, and your professional career will take your license away, and we will decertify you. That went out to 60,000 OBGYN doctors. So
we probably should have expanded the title of this: corruption of science, federal health agencies. What would you call those? Professional organizations?
These are the 3 organizations that essentially govern obstetrical care, not just in the United States of America, but the whole world.
By the way, I wanted to ask you, to what extent are the medical journals funded by various conflicting organizations, pharmaceutical companies? I've heard Chinese interests. I mean, are you aware of that? You were talking about the article written by the editors of the New England Journal of Medicine.
Yes, I'm aware of the study by Wen and colleagues, David Daniel Wen, that was just published October 10th of 2024, documenting that 1.06 billion with a B dollars went to the reviewers of the medical journals, of probably the most influential medical journals: New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, BMJ.
And that's coming out of the pharmaceutical industry.
That's correct. I'm an extremely busy clinician 45 years, okay? When I, just in the past, in my tenure, 4.5 years, while I was working through the pandemic with SSM Health, 4.5 years, I saw 27,500 high-risk pregnant patients. It was extraordinarily busy. I published extensively during that time on the government data based on Pfizer's data. I gave it to my chain of command. Never once did they treat it as science. Never once did they allow me to present in grand rounds. And after I presented under your last testimony in 2022, I was fired from SSM Health because I brought it to their attention. It was never discussed at a department meeting or at a division meeting or at a grand rounds. That's not science.